Who is the lover? Allah. Who is Ar-Rahman? Allah. Who is Al-Mannan? La ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah. Muhammad is the messenger. To Allah is our return. La ilaha illallah. Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallim taslima. قال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay, I welcome you to this last session in our Bright Sparks Forum program. We've got a very good program lined up for you today. We're going to be doing the recap as we normally do for the next 15-20 minutes, and that is a feedback session on what stood out for you from the previous workshops, what is it that you have implemented, etc. So that we'll do for the first few minutes. And then we're going to move on to the topic itself. And the topic itself is surgeries and x-rays. And that is really pertaining to how we go about choosing proper careers, proper choices in order to select a career and also courses. That will take us from as soon as we begin right up to 10:30 to 11 o'clock, we're going to take the tea break. And after tea, alhamdulillah, we got a very, very good guest. Her name is Noshlanshla Joy. And she's going to be speaking to us on social entrepreneurship. She's a person who was unemployed not many years ago. And today she's got companies and employing scores of people. And she's very, very successful. So we got her from 11 to about 12:30. 12:30 to 1 o'clock, we're going to be rounding up. You'll have your evaluation forms. And you'll recall that when we commenced the program, you did an online evaluation. Some of you did it on your smartphone. Some of you did it in the computer at the back. So now this is going to be the post-program evaluation. So every one of you will have to do that. And once we finish with that, inshallah, we'll take our lunch and Zohar break. And at 2 o'clock, the graduation will commence. From about 2 to 3, inshallah, by 3 o'clock, we will end. Okay, so as I mentioned, we've got a fantastic program lined up for you. Now, let's just recap on what we've done in the past. And what is it that in the past, especially the last session that we had a month ago, what stood out for you? What were the topics that we covered? And what is it that you might have implemented?
Society sees your talent before your character, and skills will get you your job, but your character is what keeps your job.
Okay, so on the topic of the iceberg, what is it that will get you into the door, get you an interview is your skills. But what will keep you at your job is your character. So what's more important, skills or character? Character. Okay, anyone else?
What stood out for me the last time was the fact that the gift, the size of your gift does not make you the man or woman that you are.
Mm.
You need to work hard in order to go anywhere in life and not rely on your gifts and talents.
Okay, correct. So the topic there was relating to the gifts that we have, the talents that we have. If we're going to be relying on those talents only, then very quickly we're going to be unsuccessful, because your gifts will take you so far, but it's your character that will carry you there as well. And I gave you some example of famous sports persons, etc. Okay, anyone else? I'm going to be coming to the boys, so please don't think you're getting off.
In the last few lessons, what I really learned was the thermostat and the thermometer, where the thermostat sets the temperature and the thermometer tells you what the temperature is. And you said that people are either thermostat or a thermometer, and then leaders develop values to tone others.
Okay, so we discussed the thermometer and the thermostat. So what's the difference between the two? What's the difference? Thermostat sets the temperature, and thermometer? What does the thermometer do? Reads the temperature. So one tells you what the temperature is, and the other sets the temperature. For a leader, he or she should strive to be what? A thermometer or thermostat? Thermostat. And in order to move from being just a follower, from being a thermometer to a thermostat, what is required? We have to have two things. What are the two things? One is to live by values, and the other is to pass those values to others to be of assistance to them. Okay? Right, the boys. What is it that stood out for you all from previous sessions? Starving baker. So what does a starving baker tell us?
That you have to look after yourself before you can look after other people.
Correct. So one of the topics that we did was the starving baker, and that was, it's pointless only looking after other people if you don't have time to look after yourself. And looking after yourself is both physically, spiritually, mentally, and socially. Right? So whilst there's place for us to be caring for others, we also have to care for ourselves. Okay, anyone else? Anything else before we get on to today's topic?
That there's gold inside of every one of us.
Yes.
And that we have to dig deep to find out.
To unearth it. Okay, that one topic was, it was titled The Golden Buddha. And that is, every one of us has talent. But it needs to be unearthed. So we must see what is it that we have in us, our talents that we can use for the betterment of society. And also, as leaders, we must be able to extract, to identify the talent in the people who are working with us. Okay, so alhamdulillah, that's good. Let's move on now to what we're going to be covering today. That topic is called surgeries and x-rays. As far as x-rays are concerned, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word x-ray? The purpose of the x-ray, where it is taken, etc., etc. So quickly discuss it amongst yourself. Firstly, which profession? Medical. Only medical profession? Radiography, yes. What else? Almost all of us go for x-rays at some time or the other. I'm sure in the past 2 years, almost every one of us have had an x-ray taken. Do you agree or not? Who? Dental profession. What about a dental profession? Isn't that so? Right. So, when we think of x-rays, what comes to mind? Firstly, we know the professions. What comes to mind? Bones. Okay, why bones? And why x-rays? So we want to see the condition of our bones before we do what? Before the doctor does what? Before the doctor does a surgery. Anything else with regard to x-rays? Whenever you go to a doctor, whenever you go to a dentist, and if something is wrong with you, and they are deciding whether or not to do surgery on you, the first thing they'll do is, or one of the things they'll do is, take an x-ray. And then what will that allow them to do? Once they've taken the x-ray, what's the purpose of it? To diagnose what is wrong. And once they've diagnosed what's wrong, then what would the doctor or the dentist do? What would they do? Prescribe something. Okay. And once something is prescribed, what's the final thing that's done? If you've broken a bone, x-ray is taken, it's diagnosed, something is prescribed, what is to be done? What's the final thing? Then the surgery itself. Okay, so that's what this topic is about. Doctors do not perform surgery on a broken bone without first taking x-rays to diagnose a problem. Agree with that? Similarly, students must always examine and diagnose themselves before choosing a career. How many of us do that? Before deciding on what career to choose, how many of us diagnose exactly what is appropriate for me? You say you do that. What did you do? What do you do? What you enjoy doing? Yes?
And then I see like what kind of environment will I want to work in.
Okay.
Then I'll see which is my strengths, which is my weaknesses, and then I'll decide a career going forward.
Perfect. So what she'll do is that she will see where her strengths lie, where her passion is. She'll match that with a particular profession, and then she will decide that that is the profession for her. Excellent answer. Before you prescribe an action, what we have to do? We have to look inside. So for instance, if I was an optometrist and you came to me, I see you wear glasses, and you say that, there's something wrong with my eye, and I need prescription lenses, and then I tell you, you know what, I think that these lenses, this frame will look very, very nice on you. It will make you look even prettier than you are at the moment, so this is what I prescribe for you. Right, and say, right, that is it. Give you the bill, and you leave. Will you ever come back to me again? Why won't you come back to me? Didn't get the proper prescription. So it's absolutely essential that we need to make some inquiries. We need to diagnose, we need to prescribe, and then we give the solution. So, What happens when doctors do not have the information that an X-ray provides? What happens then? You go there with a broken bone. The doctor does not take an X-ray. He diagnoses. What will happen then? Okay, when he performs surgery, something would go wrong. What else? What's even worse than that? Would he be performing surgery at the right place? Maybe he's performing it at the wrong place. Okay, now here's an interesting story that I'm going to be reading to you on this particular point. This was to do with the US President James Garfield's doctor, Dr. Bliss. And let's see what he did in 1881 after the president was shot in a train station. Right, let's see what he did. Right, one of the saddest stories in American history took place when President James Garfield was shot on July 2nd, 1881. The shooter was Charles Goodyear, a crazy man with a pistol in his pocket at a train station. He went on trial for the assassination of President Garfield months later. The pitiful part of the story is that President Garfield did not die from the gunshot wound. His death was actually due to the misguided treatment of his physician, Dr. William Bliss. Over an 11-week period of time, Dr. Bliss dug through Garfield's body, searching for the bullet. During that time, Alexandra Graham Bell showed up with a new metal detector he just created, suggesting that maybe it could help locate the stray bullet. And remember, this was in 1881. In addition, Joseph Lister had just published his new theory on germs, encouraging doctors to sanitize their hands and instruments before operating on patients. So before that time, when doctors operated on patients, they did not wash their hands, they did not sanitize their hands. Some of Dr. Bliss's medical team suggested he had this theory as it seemed to be saving lives around the world. Which theory? About sanitizing the hands, as simple as that. Unfortunately, Bliss did not listen to these men. He limited Alexander Bell's search to the right side of Garfield's back because he stubbornly assumed that that is where the bullet was. So he did not use the X-ray machine, but he started digging on the right-hand side of the president's back. He was wrong. It was on the left-hand side, and they never found it. Further, Bliss felt that Joseph Lister's theory about germs was ridiculous. Consequently, he ignorantly explored Garfield's body with dirty utensils and fingers, causing the infection to grow and eventually kill the president. Essentially, it was Dr. Bliss, the very physician assigned to help Garfield recover, who mortally wounded his patient. As one journalist put it at the time, the physician gave new meaning to the term, ignorance is bliss. What is the doctor's name? Dr. Bliss. Okay, so what's the lesson to learn from that? Today, with modern technology and discoveries, doctors recognize the importance of an extensive examination before making a diagnosis. In fact, every patient deserves 4 outcomes at their doctor's office: a thorough examination, an accurate diagnosis, a proper prescription, and the best treatment available. It was tragic that Dr. Bliss did not provide these 4 gifts to President Garfield. But let me tell you, the author of this book, Dr. Tim Elmore, says, but let me tell you something that's equally sad. Many students fail to perform them on their own lives and on their future careers. These 4 items represent different skill sets, and all are needed to diagnose, firstly to examine, to diagnose, to prescribe, and finally to act. I believe we must develop these skill sets too as we peer into the future. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? Okay. Now it's taken for granted that for any procedure to take place, there have to be X-rays. And after X-rays, then those 4 steps are followed. So, what does this have to do with you and your career? You must be wondering, now what has that got to do with me? Right, I'm in grade 10, grade 11, still a long way for me to go to university. So what's it got to do with me? In order to treat a person successfully, a doctor needs the information that comes from looking inside a patient. It is the same for careers. To be successful in a career, you need the information that comes from looking inside yourself. So we're going to be discussing now, how do you go about it? What do you look for, right, before you proceed with your career choice? Can you remember the last time you went to the doctor with a problem? Remember it? The last time you went? And what was the first step of a visit to the doctor's office? What was the first thing that the doctor did? You sat in front of the doctor, what was the first step? Even before examining you, what is the first step? Ask questions. You'll then tell him what's wrong with you, and then he'll go into more details. So, first is the examination. Thereafter is the diagnosis, and then you've got the prescription or treatment. Now, when it comes to our career decisions, we need to follow the same sequence. Many people decide on a career for the wrong reasons, and then they regret it. Some, they realize it after a year or two, and some after 8, 10 years of studies, then they realize that they have chosen the wrong career. The worst thing that a person can do is, if he's climbing upstairs, up a ladder, and as he's climbing higher and higher, trying to achieve his eventual goal, even while he's working, and then when he comes closer to what he hopes to achieve, then he realizes that the ladder is leaning against the wrong wall. Follow it? And that's exactly what happened to one of the students in one of my programs. There was a program on leadership for university students. This student was from Zululand. He had 6 or 7 A's. And what was really remarkable is that he had A's in physics and he had A in maths. Really unheard of from that part of our world. Anyway, he got those 6 or 7 A's, and the profession that he chose, or the study that he chose, was teaching. So at Zululand University, he did first year's teaching, and then he came onto my program, and the second year he went halfway. And then when we were discussing something similar to this, then he came up to me and he said, Mr. Vahed, I think I made a big mistake. I asked why? He said, I've chosen the wrong career. So this was after 1.5 years of doing teaching, or his degree for teaching. So I asked, what were you really interested in? He said, I really love physics. So why did you take teaching? I took teaching because I wanted to teach physics. I said, but where does your real passion lies? He said, my real passion lies in engineering. So he made the wrong choice. And he said, from the next term, I'm going to register for engineering. And that's what he did. Right, which meant that 1.5 years of his life was, in inverted commas, wasted. Nothing gets wasted because something that he picked up will probably be of use to him during his career. So that is what he did. Why do you think he chose that career? Teaching, in the first place. Why did he choose the wrong career? Common sense, why? He did not know what he wanted. Did he really look inside himself? And secondly, who would have told him that that is the career he must go into? Friends, peers, but not necessarily the right people. So that is what I mean by, when it comes to our career decision, we need to follow these same sequence. So we need to examine who? Ourselves. Look inside ourselves, make the diagnosis, do the prescription, and thereafter proceed. So we need to examine ourselves. With the information, we can make a much better diagnosis about the type of career path that really fits who we are. Let me give you another example. There was a person, so he's already been studying about 8 years. And then, when his parents asked him, but tell me, what do you really like doing? Where does your passion lie? And then he said, no, what I really like doing is IT. They said, if you like doing IT, then why don't you do a course in IT? So that's what he did. So about 5 months ago, he decided to do, through a private college, he decided to do web development and app development. He did it in 3 months, 4 months, and that's where his passion was. He was spending long hours, right up to 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning doing this work. And he was very well known in the community, so lots of his friends who were now business people, they started giving him work. They started asking him to develop websites for them. So even just, as I mentioned, just happened in the last 6 months. So even Ramadan time, he's a Hafiz al-Quran, so he was preparing for Taraweeh, etc. But he used to work on websites till about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. Why was he spending so much time on it? Because he was enjoying it. That's where his passion lied. And recently he's got a very good job, a very, very big company in Durban, and he is in the IT division. And that particular company is involved in various other fields like in media and in education and so forth. And he is assisting in all these other smaller companies that are now being promoted by the owner of the bigger company. So he's getting involved in all that, and he's thoroughly, thoroughly enjoying what he's doing. He's got about 3 or 4 modules left. He's registered to complete it through UNISA. So let's ask ourselves again, do we want to end up in a situation like that, where we spend about 6 to 8 years and then only realize that the ladder that we're climbing up is leaning against the wrong wall? Do we want that? Do we want that? We don't want that. We can't be wasting our parents' money or even the sponsors' money, okay? And we need to move on. So, once we examine ourselves, with the more information that we have, we make a better diagnosis about the type of career path that really fits who we are. What do you need to know about yourself prior to making a diagnosis about the career that works best for you? Right, so some of the things Sustainable mentioned, so just repeat what you mentioned when you were looking at what career you should choose. What were the things that you looked at? Things you enjoy doing, so that means where your passion lied, yes. The type of environment she would like to work in, good. Where her strengths are, perfect. So that is what we need to do. We need to see where our strengths lie. What gives me lots of enjoyment in doing? Where my passion lie? And thirdly, which environment do I want to work in? It's pointless doing medicine where you don't like to see blood. Isn't that so? Right. So, depends which environment you want to work in. Also, lots of you are females. So, what is an environment that's conducive for a Muslim female to work in? So, that's something that you might take into account. If you want to do, for instance, banking, or you want to do something in the banking field, and there's very little jobs available, most of the banks are conventional banks dealing with interest, then you might decide against it. But if there are opportunities in Islamic banks, then you say, why not? Okay? So, what we'll look for is your talents, your passions, your skills, your strengths and weaknesses. How many of us really examine ourselves to see whether we have these things or not? How many of you? How many of you have done it? Raise your hands. Maybe there are a few of you in deciding what career to choose. Okay, here's one here. There's 2, 3, 4, 5. Sustain it back. How many of you have done it? Brothers, how many of you have done it? None of you. Isn't it time to do it? Okay. We hear the word a lot. We must do something where our passion lies. What do we really mean by that? Something that you are interested in and something that you enjoy doing. Yes? Anyone else? It is something that you do where you lose all track of time. You're doing something. There's times when I used to do work, and sometimes I'm doing work at home in the bedroom. My study, unfortunately, is in my bedroom. So sometimes when I'm sitting and doing work, and I get so engrossed in the work that when my wife reminds me, can't you see it's midnight already? Then you look at your watch and say, wow, it's already midnight. Right? Now, why do you lose all track of time? Because you enjoy what you are doing. Right? Okay. So, if we say that we must do something where our passion lies, how do we find our passion? So one is what we enjoy doing. Something that we do most of the time, yes. Something that in our spare time, you'll see us gravitating towards that particular activity. That is where our passion lies. If we follow our passion, what will the result be? Obviously, it will be successful. You will be successful in something that you do. Quite often, people take occupations for whatever reason. They get into it. The money they're earning are paying their bills, but they're unhappy about it. About 15 years ago, when I was doing presentation to people in my field, lawyers, and before doing the presentation, it was about work-life balance. So I went around speaking to some of my friends, my colleagues in the legal field, and I asked them, do you like what you're doing? Majority of them said, we don't like what we're doing. We're doing it because that is what we be qualified for, but if we have a chance, we will leave that. I said, okay. And now after 15 to 20 years, every one of the people who I spoke to said we would like to leave what we are doing, they are still doing the same thing. So they are in careers where they're not happy. I'm not saying all lawyers are not happy about it, but those that I spoke to, many of them are not totally happy at what they're doing. So their passion doesn't lie there, but they're stuck into it. So that is why they find it very difficult to get up in the morning and go to work. Does that happen to our brothers, elder sisters, our parents? Do you hear them complaining? Do you? I don't even feel like getting up today. I don't want to go to work and keep on complaining about what's happening at work. Right? It means one of the reasons, could be more than one reason, one of the reasons is because their passion doesn't lie in what they're doing. Okay, so that is why it's important that we do something where our passion lies. And what's also important to remember is that when you do something where your passion lies and you'll be successful, the money will follow the success. So when you're choosing something where your passion lies and you might feel that I'm not going to make a lot of money out of it, don't let that deter you. Because eventually, wherever your passion lies, you'll end up being successful and the remuneration will follow. So these are the things that we will be looking at, and I'll show you how to identify these things. It is important to know yourself well. Do you think most people give themselves this kind of self-examination before they choose their career path? Do you think they do that? Among yourselves, you can see. Most of you haven't, right? Why don't you? If it's so important, why don't we? Okay, ask yourself, why is it that we don't do this? Do you really know yourself well? If I asked you, do you know yourself? What's your answer? Do you really know yourself? Do you know yourself? Don't feel shy to say this. If you don't know yourself, if you know yourself, say you know yourself. How many of you really know yourselves? I know what I am. I know who I am. I know why I'm on this earth. I know where I want to get to. Do you really know yourself? Do you? How many of you really know yourself? Raise your hands. Really, really. Right, so the majority of us don't. But we think that we know ourselves. So let's have a look at I'll show very quickly a movie clip. And this is an interview, the N.Ali Diaries. Have you all heard of that N.Ali Diaries movie? Heard of it? Right, so this is a small video clip from the N.Ali Diaries. And this is where this lady, Annie Braddock, she goes for an interview. And it's relating to what we are discussing now.
So, why don't you tell me, in your own words, who exactly is Annie Braddock?
Wow, that's certainly an easy enough question. Annie Braddock is a kind... Well, I am,
Go on.
well, he's here.
Huh?
I have absolutely no idea. Excuse me.
So, did she know who she was? Did she think she knew who she was? So how many of us think we know who we are, but we don't really know who we are? Ask ourselves, really, do I really know who I am? What I want? Why am I here? Where I want to be? Most of us don't. What do many people actually do when they choose a career for themselves? We know what they're supposed to do, the 4 steps. But what do they actually do in deciding what career to choose? What do they actually do? Okay, so they just do whatever comes to their mind, and what comes to their mind is what their peers might tell them to do. Who else might influence what you must do? Your parents. They might have your best interest at heart, but not necessarily that might be, you might be cut out for it. Maybe the parents are doctors or accountants or lawyers or whatever, and they want that to continue in their family as a tradition, but you might not be cut out for it. Okay? Who else could influence you? The media, absolutely. What you see in the papers, what you see on TV. When you see court cases on TV, how does it look? Exciting. And when you see that the way the lawyers are arguing, does it influence you to become a lawyer as well? Doesn't it? But half of it is not reality. In fact, 90% of what you see there is not reality. That is made up in order to entertain the audience in many cases. Okay, so that's media. So your parents, the media, your peers, and who else? Society around you, that could also influence you. Because lots of people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and they will say we want to become lawyers. Why? Because we want to address the injustice in society. See again, so what the community, what society you feel is the best interest. Not that it's wrong, but if it's a wrong choice, then you must remember why. Okay, if they do not gather information from inside of themselves, where do they acquire information that we've just discussed? Friends, parents, jobs that pay a lot of money. Isn't that what could influence us? Yes. Yes, and everyone said yes. Okay, and TV. Now you all must have been asked the question at some time, what do you want to be when you grow up? Every one of you have been asked this question. And many of you would have said, this is what I want to become. Isn't that so? Yes. Why did you say that? Right, so think about what you answered and how did you choose this option? So was it as a result of one of these 4 or 5 reasons? Your peers, like the example I gave of that young boy who was doing environmental management, his peers, his parents, eventually that's what he ended up doing law because his parents told him that. TV, media. So if we really ask ourselves, the answers that we gave, it was possibly because of one of these reasons. And that's not the right reason for doing something. You might think that none of this is relevant to you right now as a student, but it is. It is important for you to start thinking about these things from now. Do you agree with that? Absolutely. If we do not really know who we are and what we have to offer,